for anybody to set up. And then also, I think a few more folks might be joining. So about a minute or two. Okay. Can you all hear me? Because I have this thing since I'm going to be doing a practice. You can hear me? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Hope you're having a good weekend. It's like really nice out here weather-wise, so it's been a good one. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics is the Vayus, which is a little bit hard to grasp. And I definitely want to talk about the framework beforehand, because just like all frameworks and theories, it's just another framework that can help you grasp a concept of prana, of the energy that we're working with, but it can kind of be hard to grasp unless you feel it through embodiment. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we'll start with just a reflection in terms of what you did and how everything is landing with the practice of Nadi Shodhana. But just for a moment before we get started, we're going to do a grounding practice. So wherever you're seated, just take a moment to connect with yourself. Maybe the first time throughout the day you've had a chance to slow down. So if you want to close your eyes, you're welcome to. And just take a moment to feel into your body. Notice any senses around you, any smells that are drawing in and out of the nose, any sounds, any tastes that might be lingering in the mouth. Notice the feeling of the hands making contact with whatever they're holding on to. Notice the feelings of the sit bones contacting the earth. Tap into the sense of feel, being present with all of the senses in your body. And take a moment to invite any of your teachers in any way that you do that, whether I chant the Guru mantra, if you have any way to just acknowledge, and the stewards and the teachers of this practice, take a moment to do that. And honor your efforts of learning new, different concepts. And take a deep breath in. And exhale, release. 2 more just like that. Inhale. And exhale. Last one here. Inhale. And exhale. Take your head down towards the ground. Feel any tension maybe in the neck. Take some neck rolls, circling, inhaling one way, exhaling the other. Rotating the other way. And blinking your eyes open if you haven't already, and just coming back to the senses around you, to the space around you. Welcome back. And we're going to kick it off with any type of reflection that over the last couple of weeks, if you've been hopefully following the course, you would have been implementing Nadi Shodhana into your morning practice, into your life, whether you had a chance to do the video that was in the lesson or you had a chance to do it daily. Hopefully that's the case. We're just gonna start with that. Maybe any reflections that you felt from Nadi Shodhana or any questions that came up through the lessons on the topic. It was relatively short. We covered less content on the course, and that was very intentional because all of the practices are experiential, and I wanted to focus on that embodiment of the practice instead of throwing knowledge your way. So if anybody has any reflections on their practice, just allowing that to come up right now. So feel free to unmute and share. Or any questions as well. Any things that came up that you weren't sure about.
Well, I can go. I think for me,
I think I think your mic is muted.
can you hear me?
Oh, I can't. I'm sorry. It's just me. 1 second.
Can you hear me now? I think now we can't hear you. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that.
Okay, try now.
Yes.
Ah, what is happening? All right, well, give me 1 second. How about anything? Okay, I'm just gonna join audio on my phone. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Glad we did a grounding practice for me. Okay.
Can you?
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. Yes,
Everybody.
I can
Awesome.
hear you.
No, I think for me, I just wanted to like point out, I think these last few days I've been feeling a little like restless. I do my practice like in the morning. I try to do it twice. I do it in the morning and then before I go to sleep,
Mhm.
as well, which I found was just something like extra that I wanted to add on. And I feel like I've been feeling like very restless, but I also see because there were a couple of days that I was just in a rush and I just couldn't do the practice for different reasons. And I could definitely sense the difference of me going through the day. Like,
Wow.
like my thoughts were like racing, and not that when I would like do my practice in the morning, like my thoughts wouldn't be like that, but I think throughout the day, how I carry myself, I found was completely different, and how I like just deal with different like situations that come up, definitely more grounded when I stick to the practice, especially in the morning.
Wow.
I found kind of the difference and I felt it. And even it was like 2 different days that were kind of further apart.
Mhm.
So it was interesting to see that. And I was like, oh my God, like I can feel the difference on like in how I feel. So yes,
Wow.
yeah.
That's incredible. And I'm just curious how long you did the practice and if you don't mind sharing which one, because there's different types. There's like stage 1, stage 2, just for more information for the rest of us.
Yeah. So first things first, so I started like at first because I was more comfortable with like I've been practicing yoga for a while now. So I was like a little comfortable with like square breathing. And I was like, let me just start with that and like start slow. So I've been doing that. And then I'm doing like now I'm doing stage 2.
Mhm.
Um,
One,
and
yeah.
yeah, so it's been a little challenging to be honest. Like some mornings I am like, oh my God, I like it takes a lot of discipline for me to do it,
Mhm.
but I've been enjoying it. Um and at night, I usually just do like some square breathing. I don't because usually if I do, I found that sometimes I couldn't like sleep. I don't know, I was just feeling like maybe like excited and I was like, oh, I could like like
Yeah,
so perfect right now, you know?
yeah. With
I'm
the
so-
square breathing, it kind of,
yeah.
oh, interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, I felt like very excited. I like remember just texting my friends, be like, I could like start a company right now. Like I'm really very hyped at like 11
Yeah.
p.m. So that was
Oh,
fun.
that's so interesting.
So
Oh.
yeah, I know it's interesting, but I think it's been giving me a lot of knowledge on my body. So I think
Mhm.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I have a couple of things on kind of to reflect on what you said, if you don't mind me sharing. One of the things is that the square breathing at night, because you hold your breath for 4 counts, it's not that it's an activating technique, but it's more activating than some of the other techniques. Whereas if you did Vishrama Vritti or Nadi Shodhana with the longer exhales, so inhale for 4, exhale for 8, it's supposed to have the opposite impact on the nervous system. So I would play with that, and if that is still not sitting at night, we're gonna actually dive into tranquilizing pranayama techniques this coming module, and I think there'll be a lot of stuff for you to play with for the evening specifically. So that's interesting. And the other thing I was going to say about the morning, it's already incredible that you're seeing the impact in your day. And what I found is like when working with people, the longer that they, use it, not only do they feel the lingering impact in the day, but it's like in the moments when we feel the most triggered, it's natural. It's like subconscious that we start using that breath because we're so used to it. We do it every morning. So it becomes this like communal, like it just compounds on itself in terms of how valuable it is for our day. So thanks for sharing. It's exciting to see that that is, already sitting well with you. Thanks. Any other thoughts or reflections or questions on the practice? Did anybody feel blockage in their nostrils? Did anybody, sit down for Nadi Shodhana and say like, oh, this is not, I'm seeing a lot of nods. And I'm curious if anybody is willing to talk a little bit about that. I do have a recommendation for that, but I want to hear some experiences before.
Yeah, I noticed. So there's a lot terrible grass pollen right now in Maryland.
Mm.
It was tree pollen, now it's grass. And even though I do the neti pot and nasya every morning, like there was just some mornings that like I just my right nostril was like nope.
No.
And so it was interesting to pause and then go back to um, you know, the other breath practices just because I was like, okay, I don't want to force it. Because even in the module you said, if you feel that clogged, one nostril feels clogged, like, maybe today's not the day. And I finally today was I was finally able to do the full three the preparatory stage, beginner and intermediary stage, and I finally was like, oh, okay, yeah, this feels really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also noticed, Mira, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts and everybody else's, like, depending on where you are in your cycle, too, I've noticed that, like, sometimes Nadi Shodhana, like, for me and maybe the way I'm wired, actually didn't feel grounding. And so I would scale back on it and just do, some avriti or another type of breath practice because I felt like where I was in my cycle, I was just like so like just overly stimulated or like was having a hard time focusing and concentrating that it actually sort of heightened it versus like bringing me down. So I don't know if that's something that is common.
I would say a couple things on that. I think it's very common. Cycle syncing is huge in Ayurveda. We sync with nature, we sync with our cycles. Everything is constant synchronization. And as people who have cycles, that is not the daily cycle. It's the 28. I think it's important. That's all like really valuable feedback. So I would say whatever is happening, that is trust that gut, and that practice is not right for that cycle, that phase of your cycle. I would say that's really valuable information, and the fact that you're able to tell and you're that in tune with your body is incredible. So I would say trust that. And then I would also say look at the stage that you're using. So if you're using the holds and you're staying during the more, you know, I don't know what part of your cycle you're feeling that in, but like just if you notice that during one part of your cycle, you're feeling more of this like restlessness, then go back to the basics where it's inhales are going to be activating, holds are going to be activating, exhales are deactivating, and maybe it's a time for you to do one part inhale and 2 parts exhale. And if that's still making you feel not right, then, you know, just find a different practice. There's so many different practices for a reason. And I think to tell somebody to do this just because, you know, it's been done before and it's how we should do it, I think that's not the perfect way to go about things. And I think it should be very customized. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I think the neti pot is a great alternative if you are feeling the blocked nostrils. And there is also this understanding, and you know, one of the modules that covered was more on the energy. So this like Ida and Pingala and Shushudna, and some people love the understanding of energy and prana, and some people are like, I don't feel it, I don't get it, so they don't really embody it, and that it's not something that they naturally use. So take it or leave it. But if you do really sense that energy and you feel more that energetic impact, something that I've seen is if your nostrils are blocked and you're in love with Nadi Shodhana, like you really don't want to let it go for even a day, instead of going like inhale, you can even squeeze a wrist. Like you squeeze your wrist and you breathe, and then you release that wrist, and then you squeeze the other wrist, you breathe, and release, and breathe, and release. And so it's not the same, but if you think about, if you believe in the energetic channels, you're activating the right and you're activating the left. So it is just another way of tapping into it if you're, and then either way, you're regulating your breathing. So just back to basics, that's going to also impact your nervous system. So cool. I love these reflections. Was there anything else anybody wanted to share? Okay, well, you're always welcome to email me if things come up, any questions come up, and we're going to dive into the Vayus now. And is anybody like familiar with the Vayus? This is a really subtle body concept. Okay, all right. I might lose some of you. I'm not gonna lie. So just bear with me and remember that everything is a framework. I like to approach everything with a critical mind, and I hope that other people do that as well. Whether I'm studying scientific empirical research, I look at who is the people that wrote this research, who is funding this research. When I study yoga texts, the Upanishad, I say, when is it written? Is that time still applicable to us now? Can we even relate to that? Does our world look the same today as it did back then? And so the only truth that I've found in my studies, whether it's in, you know, education in a formal way or through yoga, is my own experiential evidence. And so whenever you learn these concepts, I encourage you to really work to embody them. And if you feel it, then that is truth. And that's how I've lived it. And I really feel the Vayus. The more I learn about it, the more it starts to resonate. But when I first learned about it and I didn't embody it, I didn't really get it. So I just want to provide that understanding before I go into it. So when we look at the Vayus, the fundamental principle from the Vayus comes from the Upanishads. And in the Yurja Veda, actually from the Vedas, but one of the lines that is stated is that as in the macrocosm, in the same way the microcosm. So what they were saying really, really far back was that when we look at our environment, when we look at the atmosphere, when we look at the winds, when we look at nature, when we look at the leaves, we are a reflection of nature. Why do we think that as humans, we don't function with the same laws as nature? And when you think about physics, we all function with the same laws. And so they were like really, really fixated on this idea that in order to study us as humans, our anatomy, our health, our whole being, our wellness, Ayurveda doctors do this, we got to study our nature and we got to master our nature and we have to fully understand. When you look at nature and you look around, you look outside, wind is a huge part of what exists. So we think of wind moving up, wind moving down, we have cyclones, tornadoes, the wind is constantly moving. And they said, if wind is such a big force, wind moves water, wind impacts our oceans, wind really has an entire impact on our ecosystem. So they said, if wind is such a big part of what controls the natural living world, why are we assuming that as people, we don't have winds within us? And when you think about it from a very atomic physiological perspective, we blow wind out of our nose. All of the holes in our body is releasing wind. And there's constantly movement in and movement out. And so there is a movement of wind in the body. And so they call these Vayus. Vayus are referred to as the wind. And when we think about prana, we talked about this like life force or energy. The way they would describe prana is like when we're born, prana is just like a blob of flubber. It's just like a block of nothingness. But there's this nothingness, and then there's this force of all these winds that start to shape it into the body, start to shape it into our different systems, our digestive system, our endocrine, our circulation, our heart. Basically, Vayus is the force that causes our body to be what it is. So very deep. And also you can boil it down and take out the layers and say, okay, we actually have moving air through the body. And so we can look at it from that point of view, or we can get really deep about it. And so the Upanishads say that all that exists rests in the control of prana. So if we can master prana, we can master our minds, our bodies. And prana is this energy that gives us life and can also withdraw it. And if you can understand the movement in the body of the Vayus, then you can fully control the mind, the body, and it's one of the deepest things. If you can master this understanding of energy moving through your body, you can master the self, and that's what's stated in the Prashna Upanishad. So okay, like you're like, this is really deep, but. So we have, how can we actually work on it? The great thing is that they said asana, pranayama, meditation is all ways of moving the wind in the body. And when we understand the wind and the direction of energy, we can work with this. The other system that is related to this is the chakras. So the chakras are essentially concentration of these energies. We have different winds in the body, and we say areas that wind is kind of concentrated in makes a center of energy. And that is a chakra. So people kind of, when they think of the chakras, I think it's gotten so far from what it is. They think of it like a round circle that's pink or red or yellow. And those are just visualizations of these winds that concentrate in different parts of the body. So they're kind of this whole thing. So yeah, like just what I said, you know, this is just a framework, as is the gunas, as is the polyvagal theory, as is the Vayus. You know, you always have to question, you always have to feel and embody it to understand. Just a bunch of images of wind, just to remind us how much wind is part of our life and our animals and everything. Okay, any questions about this? How are we feeling? Good? Okay, so let's look at these different winds. This is a diagram that I got online that shows us the different winds in the body, okay? And if you just feel for a second, if you're just sitting and even you want to close your eyes, you could totally do that. As you breathe in, you'll notice this just rise of the chest. As you breathe out, you notice this grounding of the belly. So atomically, we know what's happening. The diaphragm is moving, yada, yada, yada. If you look at it from the Vayus, they would say that the upward energy is moving our chest up, and the downward energy is moving our belly down. And this upward energy takes us up, this downward energy takes us down. So there's already these two opposing forces that we can feel when we breathe in and out. So we're going to start with Apana Vayu. So Apana Vayu is, you know, the root of your like sit bone right now, like your anal area. But just think right now where you're seated, that root between you and the support you're on, that is Apana Vayu. So it's this like grounding. Sometimes I'll make people think about roots going down from underneath their Like when you're sitting, just imagine that these roots that are holding onto the earth. And that is how this Apana Vayu shows up, this like heavy force drawing us down. From a function point of view, they would say that Apana, oh, you don't see the diagram? I'm sorry. Wow. Thank you for letting me know that. I'm like having a tech day for sure. Okay, now you got it. Thank you. How's that? Okay. So we have Apana Vayu, that's this downward energy that is again responsible right here in the red. It's all going downwards. So again, at the base of the spine, like we said, and the function of this is to eliminate waste and water, like anything from the body. So I don't know if I don't know if you all would love this example, but when I am on my cycle and I have my period, I just feel like everything is going down. Like just everything is like, it's easier to go to the bathroom. It's just all releasing down. I know people who struggle with constipation on their periods, it's basically gone. And so they would say that the Apana Vayu is really heavy and it's all flowing down. And that's that wind that flows down. So excretion, waste of matter from the body, it's actually the force of reproduction. So to childbirth, it's all this like heavy downward force. And this is what it allows us to do. So it allows us to have, because of this, we can have healthy cycles, we can have childbirth, we can have immunity, and we can exhale. So back to basics. So when we have a strong Apana Vayu, we feel this protective force. It allows us to ground and root. It feels safe, protected, this grounding to earth. And it really is something that we need today with all the chaos of the world right now and everything that is going on. It's so hard to just lose ourselves in the outside world. And that is important. But how do we come back and ground? And it's through this Apana Vayu. So people who have a strong Apana Vayu, they might see what's happening and they're not ignorant about that. And it's not like they're not doing something, but they're also able to stay in their bodies as they're doing what they need to do for this world. So everything, back to the yogis, they compare everything to the cosmos. So they would say that this is the pull of the earth energy. Like it's what allows things to be pulled downward. It's tamasic, it's elimination. So yeah, any questions about Apana? Does this make sense what it is? Yeah. Okay, so the opposite is prana. So here in the diagram, you can see in the chest, just the chest. So some people get confused. It's not the throat, it's just the chest. So it's not the navel, it's like kind of like right underneath your rib cage up. And when you breathe, you can even breathe right now, it goes up. And when you exhale, Apana goes down. So this is kind of in the heart area, this heart. And the function is it allows us to breathe, sigh, cough. And in the Upanishads, again, they just had such an understanding of the cosmos. So they said, prana is the rising sun. It's like the rising sun. So as we breathe, the sun, is kind of rising. We feel this like respiration. We feel sensory perception. It allows us to like perceive what's around us. It allows for the function of the inhale, and it's energizing. So going back to the gunas and what we've learned, when we think of rajas, this is the function. It's energizing. It's this energy that we feel. And when it's balanced, when our prana vayu is balanced, we'll feel a deep sense of contentment and nourishment, like a big like hug at the chest. We actually also feel heightened sensitivity to what's happening around us. So opposite of Apana Vayu. It's, like people sometimes just like see everything and they're just so aware of what's happening. And it's the force of like social justice and transformation. And we need this as humans. It's human growth. It allows us to have self-growth. But when it's only prana, we're just constantly taking in, it can be overwhelming. So we need Apana to ground us down. We're taking in, but then we also need the grounding force to help us ground. So when it's not balanced, the mind can feel like, if you think about it, it's so associated with passion and enthusiasm. So when it's not balanced, you could say that the mind is just kind of like lackluster, like whatever, apathetic. Same issues that if you're unbalanced with if you have too much tamas, like we talked about before, it's going to be that like lackluster, like I'm just kind of over it. And in an Ayurveda concept, they would say that this is related to heart and lung conditions. So if we don't have a healthy prana vayu, that would be heart and lung conditions. I'm not an Ayurveda doctor, so I don't know anything about that. And it's not black and white. It's not like, okay, I'm going to be all prana vayu and then suddenly all apana vayu. It fluctuates and it cycles. And one of the fundamental concepts of yoga is that everything cycles. And just when we think we finally understand ourselves and our body and our energy, it's going to change on you. So we have to be comfortable with impermanence, and we have to realize that there's not one model for everything. It's not always going to make sense. Sad truth. And okay, so any questions about prana vayu? Okay. Then we have udana vayu, which is in our throat center. So this is responsible for speech, movement. I don't know if anybody has a meditation practice where they just kind of sit and meditate, but sometimes if you do, you might have felt that the longer you sit and meditate, your spine just naturally gets a little taller and taller. And it's like subconscious. You're just sitting there, and you might try it one day. Just sitting there focusing on maybe your heart or your throat, and suddenly it's just easier to sit up. Like it's almost like something came and took a string and just pulled you up. And it's just like, what's happening right now? Or some days where you just feel like it's so much easier to sit up straight, where other days you just don't feel that. In this understanding, according to this model, they would say that your udana vayu is in balance. You are feeling this natural lift of energy that exists, this natural wind. And so both udana and prana work together to lift up the body. And as the understanding is, as energy moves up, we actually become more selfless. So that's just an understanding from the Yoga Sutras. And I love the Yoga Sutras. It can be kind of like, what is happening? But they say one who masters udana is a master of levitation, the force that draws the energy up. So sometimes when you hear like some deep yoga stuff, people talk about levitation, and it's like, what's happening? But that's what they would say there. So when you feel this is balanced, there is an intense like expression of joy, there's creativity, there's resiliency. I'd also say there's this ability to be more vocal. And if you feel like energy is stuck in your throat, like you can't vocalize, you want to speak, you want to express yourself, you have this desire to teach, but you can't. They would say that there's this stuckness in this wind in the throat. So people would work on that. Like some people do like chakra meditations where they're focused on the throat, all the similar kind of stuff going on there. Yep. And the other thing that the yogis believed is that there's like a channel of energy moving up the spine, and that when we die, the energy moves up all the way through that because of the force of this wind. So it allows energy to move up and release out of the body. Cool. How many people have I lost? Okay, awesome. And then there is Samana Vayu. So Samana Vayu is actually a really important access point for us. When you think of the winds, and I was talking to like a meteorologist the other day, and I was geeking out about wind. And he's like, why are you so interested in this? I was like, there's a reason. But there's this upward wind, and then there's this downward wind. And what he was telling me is actually they start to mix and they go like this. And that's what happens, like actually in our environment. So there's upward and there's downward, and when they mix, they go like this. And then it just goes up and it goes down. And so that mixing is samana. Samana vayu is this, it's in the navel area, and it's responsible for digestion, it's responsible for heat, it's responsible for metabolism, and it's this equalizing force between prana and apana. So the two are so different. One is external, one is like internal, and we need to have that constantly moving and internalizing and integrating in the center of us. So it's the middle breath that draws the two together. and it's responsible for all of the energy of the food going to where it needs to go. If you've ever heard from an Ayurveda doctor talk about Agni, this like center of digestion, this is where your Agni, your fire of digestion lives. It's a turning point between the inhale and the exhales. So you think about those pauses, it's like more about Samana Vayu. And if you know healers like acupuncturists, Reiki, any of those type of healers, this is actually the storehouse that they say is the storehouse for healing energy. So a lot of them will focus in on this area. So the function is it allows us to have a deep and smooth exhale. And in the Upanishads, they say if you can have a balanced samana vayu, then you will not be at the mercy of the external world. Because prana is you're at the mercy of the external world. You're lost. And if you can balance this integration, then you can take the external world and you can integrate it, and then you can act in a way that allows us to change, but without getting lost in that. So you won't be pulled by desire, this like void that a lot of people are trying to fill, where they're just like, I'm going to grab onto money and grab, just fill this void. They would say this is the void. And a lot of I've been learning a lot about addiction recently in class, and a lot of people describe this void that is just part of our humanity, and they would say this is filling that void. So when you're balanced and you feel the balanced samana vayu, you're not as focused on filling this void. When it's not balanced, the desires take over, you feel void, and you're exhausted because you're just constantly chasing, and you're never feeling like your cup is full. So there's a lot of things. The great thing about all of this is that this, especially with samana, is the center of access point for all asana. Like 90% of asana poses, you will use your navel. Whether you're working on your core, whether you're twisting, you will see that there's so much in yoga, whether you're breathing with your diaphragm, like when you're pumping your belly up and down, there's so much that has to do with this area. So it's a really good access point. And then Dhyana Vayu is like everything around. It's like all around the body. It's kind of the space, and here in this diagram, you can see this red box that just covered all of it. It's nourishment for the whole body. It's the life force that allows the nerves, the arteries to have blood flowing through it. The Vayu moves through the nadis, which are energetic channels. So if you ever look at diagrams of the nadis, there's all of these like channels in the body, and they say Vijnana moves through all of that. And it allows for proper communication between all of the Vayus. So how do prana and apana and samana and udana, how do they all communicate? And it's through this medium. And it gives us this sense of community in the body. The best way that it can be described is, when you feel like, I feel a sense of community around me. I know when I need help, I have that. That is what it does for the body. It makes it feel like it's at home, and it has the sense of community around it. So when it's not balanced, we feel like our body's not communicating. My mind and my body are working on different wavelengths. I'm moving so fast, but my body it's just not all synchronized. That's what we feel. And we feel alienation from ourselves and others. Again, just according to this model. And we feel the integration of the self when it's balanced, and all the nadis stem out of the heart center. So like we feel this like movement from the heart out to everything, to the limbs, to the legs, and it's just kind of all pervasive. So that was like a very like me boiling down an extremely profound concept in like 20 minutes. And it's something that you have to sit with. We'll do a practice. Is there any questions that come off the bat right away about this? Or
I
any
have
thoughts?
a question about like the sections where you mentioned the not balanced parts.
Mhm.
I feel like I could really relate to that because I feel like there are some imbalances that I could relate to. So how do you know when you're actually balancing the Vayu through pranayama?
Well, that's like what usually typically hatha yogis will really know how to balance these vayus through just like pranayama and different asana techniques. I would say that you have to sit with it for a really long time because you have to feel the movement. Until you can feel that movement, you won't really fully know, if that makes sense. But let's just say you feel like, okay, I'm noticing that this void, this samana vayu is feeling really resonative to me. Then I would encourage you, when you sit in your practice in the morning, to feel your navel, to like engage your core a little bit and release your core and engage your core and release your core, or to do some like work in that core area, or even when you're breathing, to like breathe and pulse this area, right? And see if you can feel anything there. Can you feel any energy? Can you feel anything there? And only when you can feel it will you understand, like, if this is something that you even believe in, or if prana, right? That's the heart center. In the morning, I would encourage that person to just meditate on the heartbeat, and maybe over time they'll start to feel that. So I would say that you have to work typically with a yoga practitioner. This is what they do. Yoga therapists do this. And I know a lot of good yoga therapists if you're interested in, that work. So yeah, I guess experiential, knowing where you're not balanced, using the right practices for that, and potentially working with somebody if you don't really exactly know how this works. Does that help? Yeah. Cool. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. Okay, so why don't we get set up for practice? And we can, just let me know if my volume is all funky. Okay, so go ahead and get set up. I think you should be able to see me. I'm gonna stop sharing. I don't know how I stop sharing. Why don't I? Zoom. Okay, stop sharing. Oh, that worked? Okay, cool. So go ahead and get set up with a mat. And like I mentioned, if you have a bolster and 2 blocks. And we're gonna start this practice with, you can put your stuff out to the side. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. So you are going to start with your hands on the ground, and you're just going to take your hands together and let your head come down to the mat. So a little blanket here for your head. And as you come down, I want you to just start to notice the connection between your body and the earth. So this front part of the body is always taking in information, and we're closing down this front part. We're getting into the realm of apana vayu, which is this grounding. So you slow down, you can start to slow down the exhales. And focus on feeling the downward pull and the heaviness of the legs. Just a couple of moments here. Just focus on that downward pull. Start to notice if your legs are feeling heavier. And then just draw your awareness to the rest of the body. Observe any communication
between the chest and the ground. So do you feel your heart pulsing? What does the navel feel like on the ground? And take 2 more deep breaths in, but with that long exhale. Good. As you exhale, you're going to press up onto all fours. Your knees are going to be underneath the hips, and you're going to move your hands forward. So usually it's right directly above the below the shoulders, but I want you to move the hands forward. And you're going to tuck your toes. So tuck your back toes under. And then you're going to take your hips to the right and circle your hips forward. So you're kind of in a cobra-ish. Your pelvis is down to the ground. And then circle your hips to the left and back to the right. So all you're doing is taking circles with the hips and using your breath and synchronization here. This is waking up the base of our spine, and we're focusing on the exhales to tap into the downward pull of Apana. And let the movement get more natural as you keep it going. And then cycling the other way. Good. Come back to the center. Move your hands underneath your shoulders. Curl your back toes under. Send your hips up. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Breathe. Draw your awareness to your belly, to your navel. Notice if you feel anything there. Now step your feet up to the front of your mat and hang down, Uttanasana, forward fold. Just feel the connection between this downward pull of energy. Take your hands towards your hips. Slowly rise up to Tadasana, mountain pose. Good. Standing there and just rooting your feet to the ground. And rolling your shoulders back, palms facing forward. Feel the points of connection of the feet to the earth. Imagine that there's a string pulling your head up towards the ceiling. Good, keep that stance. And in that stance, I want you to tap into the opposing forces, Apana, as you exhale, and Prana, as you inhale. Apana and Prana. Just feel the two opposing forces. Good. So you're going to take your arms up overhead and interlace the fingers. And reach through the side body all the way up. We're opening the lungs and the chest. This is a prana vayu. And breathe. You can keep your feet about hips width apart. Just keep breathing. Take your arms to the right side. Feeling the left side body, the rib cage, the lungs. Again, all of this is Pranavayu. Inhale. Left side. Keep breathing. As you inhale, lift the lower ribs, and exhale, feel the downward movement. Bend your elbows and take your arms behind your back. So you're gonna go like this. This is opening up the chest, and breathe. Inhale as you lift the lower ribs. Exhale as you feel that groundingness. So here, as we start to open up the chest and tap into Pranavayu, we want to balance by feeling the rootedness of the base. So even you can think about it for a moment. If you were just to focus on this openness and this upward movement, there's nothing to hold you down. But when you draw your awareness to your mind, holding you at the base of your navel, it's a grounding energy that can keep you down. Good. Stay there for a breath. Good. Now you're going to take your hands to your knees, like this. Usually we don't lock our elbows, but I want you to lock your elbows and take a bend in the knees. Okay, so this is going to work with our belly. So as you inhale, you're going to draw back. And as you exhale, you're going to lower the spine. I want you to focus on drawing the navel in and out. This is Samanavayu. And just focus on that drawing in and out of the navel. And use your breath. Right, all of this can be accomplished through pranayama. We could do a breathing practice, but when we feel it in the body, it's much easier to connect with it in our breathing. So just feel that for a couple of breaths. In and out, synchronizing breath and movement. And there's actually a pranayama technique where we move the belly in and out and we circle the belly as well. And next week, we're going to learn about the bandhas. So it's really important to feel this connection with the Vayus. Now slowly stand up again. And just closing your eyes, feel the energy if you feel anything. Maybe you feel downward pull, maybe upward. And do you feel anything in the navel? Good. We're going to make our way down to the ground. You're going to take one block at the highest setting at the top of your mat, and one block at the lowest setting. If you don't have blocks, you could just take a pillow, and essentially what we want is to have the heart elevated like this. So I've seen this done with a pillow and a blanket underneath, right? We want to have the heart open. You can start with your feet together, your knees out to the sides. And just feel the chest rising and falling. Now extend the legs out. And just visualize the heart. Just notice the upward movement of this heart and the downward movement. If you tilt your head back a little bit, you'll feel the throat. And now just let the head come back to neutral so that the chin is facing directly up. I want you to just visualize that you have all of these energy channels flowing out of the heart. I want you to visualize that there's this energy spreading throughout the shoulders, the chest, spreading into the arms, the side body, and anything that you might be holding on to, any stressors, is just starting to melt out of the heart. It's going down the navel, the belly, through the legs, through the feet, all the toes. The energy is radiating out the shoulders, the arms, the elbows, the forearms, and all of the fingers of the arms. And that energy is moving up through the neck, through the face, all the way up. And in this way, that energy is spreading throughout the entire body. And this is Vyana Vayu. This is the container of everything. What does it feel like to have this force that's spreading through the body, keeping us safe? Our sense of community within, harmony. And just sit here for the next minute or so, tapping into Vyana Vayu. I want you to start wiggling your toes and your fingers, your wrists and your ankles. And make your way onto your right side in a fetal position. You could use the bolster for support for the head. And gently press yourself up into a seat with the legs crossed. Take your time. And just ending this practice, I want you to feel your whole body. Is there any pulsing sensation in different areas of the body? Do you feel any energy moving? Just awareness, whether or not you feel anything, just becoming aware. You can take your right hand to your heart and take a moment to express compassion and gratitude to yourself for learning a new concept and having an open mind. Take a moment to express gratitude to our ancient yogis who had so much wisdom about the body. And taking a deep breath in and out. You can take your gaze down and slowly blink your eyes open, coming back to your space. I know we're at the 6 mark, so if anybody wants to hop, you're welcome to. And if anybody wants to stay and just reflect or chat about that or any questions, you're also welcome to. Next sessions for our self-guided course will cover tranquilizing pranayama techniques. And then we will cover the bandhas in our in-person session, which I'm not covering in the course for a very specific reason. It's a really advanced practice, and I want us to have enough space to do that. So yeah, if you can come next time, we'll cover the pandas. And yeah, feel free to stick around with any questions. And thank you all for the time. I really appreciate it, especially on a Sunday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Bye. Bye, Erin.
Have a nice evening.
Bye. Thanks. I'll see you soon.